Hey, in today's video, I want to talk about a question I get asked quite a lot, and this is mostly for beginners getting into flash photography or any kind of lighting. It could be LED, but purchasing some lights rather than using the available light sources around you. Now, I obviously have a lot of lights in the studio. I think we have somewhere around 20 flash units, but I have those for commercial reasons. When I started out with one. However, one is not the most useful amount of lights to have. Now, a lot of my work is created with one key light. I mean, all work is pretty much created with one key light. That's a gross oversimplification of things, but there's normally a most important light in a scene. So obviously we need one light. And then I often find that because of the way that I personally shoot, I need a second light for the background. But pretty much anything else within this can now be created with flags and scrims and mirrors and nets. So we don't necessarily need to add more light straight away. I actually think that 2 lights is a great starting point for off-camera flash. Now, of course, you can buy more and you can have more, and having more is always more useful. I'll often pull out a 3rd or a 4th light or a 5th light. But 2 lights can get most things done. And I think it's a really good, affordable way to get into flash. One light can be really tricky because if you want to have a whole scene lit and a background lit as well, it's quite hard to get the inverse square to work in your favor, to get the rich deep shadows in the foreground and then also the background lit. So having those 2 lights available is very useful, which brings us to modifiers. If I was going to choose my first 2 modifiers, I'd probably go for a nice standard reflector and a softbox. I'd probably use the softbox predominantly to light my background and the reflector for my particular style of work to light the foreground of the subject, to give that nice sculpted light and a really nice creative current commercial look, rather than something from like the 1990s where it's all soft and gradated. Now, if you're looking for advice on which lights to buy when starting out, I'd start out with something affordable, something from Godox or Pixapro or that brand family. They're all the same brand, it's just badged up differently for different countries. So I'd look into those sorts of areas. If you had a little bit more to spend, I'd probably make a big jump and go for something like Pro Photo or Broncolor. And I'll have a video on how to choose or what makes a good light coming out soon. But for now, if you're tight on cash, go for the Godox brand. It's a really good solid bit of kit. I know a few e-commerce studios now using it over things like Broncolor or Pro Photo, just from a cost saving point of view. So the images I'm going to show you now, they're a selection of images shot with one light, just to show you what's actually possible with a single light in food and drink photography. And now these images here, these are 2 light setups, obviously using bits of cards and flags as well, but predominantly based around 2 lights. Now, these final few shots were using many lights. I couldn't remember how many I used, so I don't keep diaries of this sort of stuff. But it should give you an idea that just because I used more lights doesn't mean it's a better shot than those that I used fewer lights on. So the number of lights you have doesn't determine the quality of work, and 2 lights is probably the sweet spot for starting out in photography.